Hello everyone, I'm Annan, and today we're going to take a look at my Ukrainian-themed Busby Sentinel modification named Kyiv. I'm going to discuss the aesthetics, then show you what's inside, crony it, and give you an accuracy test. Let's get into it. Before we go over the blaster itself, I would like to explain that I painted my Sentinel in the Ukrainian color scheme as my response to the people who painted their Sentinels in the Soviet color scheme in the past. And also to answer the question of why I decided to mod one of these instead of getting a slab is because it is very expensive at $185, and since I found Sentinels being sold for $70 on Blaster Barn for the time being, I decided to get a Sentinel and make it perform the same as a typical slab for a little more than half the price. But with that said, let's start with the aesthetics of the blaster. At the front, I have an orange painted half-inch PVC tube that shrouds the 17/32 brass barrel, and I left just enough to attach a scar barrel like this one made by AC Foamworks. Moving back, I added a 3D printed Picatinny rail designed by Thingiverse user Arkin, which allows me to attach any optic I would like to use. However, I do want to note that the files came in two sets of railing, but I decided to only screw the back part because I had misalignment issues when it came to drilling screw holes, which is evident by the remaining holes on the top of the shell. Now on to the new stock. The original stock length was extended by using a cut down Slingfire stock, which I had lying around after I cut down my personal Slingfire. With this extension, it makes shouldering and resting my cheek on this blaster more comfortable than being cramped up with the original stock length. Now let's talk about the paint job. For the main blue base, I used a Rust-Oleum Brilliant Blue on the main blaster shell and Slingfire stock. Then for the yellow snap-on parts, I used a Rust-Oleum Sun Yellow. After applying black and gray details with brush paint, I finished off with a Rust-Oleum Satin Enamel Clear Coat, which is the same thing I used on the Dolce LS to make it more consistent with that blaster due to being in the same family. Speaking of the paint job, the lever has been painted yellow, and I also wrapped a lot of yellow paracord around the bottom of it to add comfort to the prime due to the increased spring load on the blaster, which we'll get into in a moment. Lastly on the blaster, I added vinyl decals of the nation's coat of arms on both sides of the original stock region and the nation's flag on both sides of the center of the blaster. With all the externals covered on this blaster, it's about time we crack it open and see the upgrades that I made. But before we do that, I want to show you the necessary cuts I made to the Sentinel stock region to accept the newly added Slingfire stock. Now with the stock out of the way, let's continue opening the blaster. Now starting with the breech assembly. This brass breech that I have made for this blaster is a unique design that I'm going to have to display a visual mock-up on the screen in order for you guys to clearly see how I made this breech. So I have an 8-inch 17/32 brass barrel, then connected to that is a 9/16 brass dart guide with 3 tightening rings, with the third tightening ring touching the end of the barrel itself. The reason I did the barrel this way is to prevent jamming and misfeeds when it comes to loading a dart into the barrel directly. To connect the barrel to the Sentinel's faux barrel, I have a 1/2-inch PVC tube that is glued to the faux barrel. Also above the magwell, I have a skinny PVC top guide that is placed above where the magazine would be situated. The purpose of this guide is to help with feeding darts consistently when the bolt pushes the darts into the 9/16 guide. Speaking of the bolt, the AR has been removed and I added a small nub of 17/32 brass to seal with the 9/16 dart guide. On the plunger tube, I filled in some holes with epoxy putty to make sure that the part that connects with the lever won't snap from the added force of the spring load. Now for the plunger assembly. The plunger rod has been padded at the front and reinforced with a small piece of 9/16 brass that is epoxy putty below the head. For the spring load itself, I'm using the stock spring plus a Fortnite HCE spring, which required me to use a piece of 3/4-inch PVC as a spring spacer to allow me to use the spring efficiently. With everything covered on this blaster, let's talk about the chrono results. So this blaster got a high of 199, a low of 178, and an average of 187 feet per second. This is pretty comparable to a lot of the high-powered springers that shoot under 200 FPS, like Worker's various high-powered blasters. With the numbers out of the way, let's see the accuracy of this blaster. Starting with max darts. Since the max darts shot pretty abysmally, I'll try the bamboo darts and see how well those work.
Film here.
Despite the poor accuracy of the darts, which I believe is from the used quality of the max darts, it still performs on par with a lot of the competitive blasters that shoot under 200 FPS, and looks pretty beautiful while doing it. With that said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, thanks for watching, and happy modding!